Hello and welcome to the Green Living Now podcast. I am Amy Todisco, your host and Green Living mentor and retreat leader. I'm so excited to have you here. Today, we're going to be talking with Amelia South, who is a forager and an herbalist. But before we dive into this amazing conversation, which is chock full of information, I wanted to share a little bit about my own personal history with medicinal herbs. I have been delving into herbs for many years and have included herbal workshops in my retreats. I've taken kids from our kids' camp to local herbalists. We've made lip balms and tinctures and learned about the value of herbs. And even on my farm tours, I talk about things that are growing beneath our feet as we're walking around, including the ones that I've planted in my garden. I am so excited about this conversation. There are so many things that you're going to learn. I feel like herbs are so much more than just plants. They are kind of a bridge to a natural way of life that our ancestors started with. I'm excited for you to hear all this great information that you can put to use. Amelia South, welcome to the Green Living Now podcast.
Thank you.
Yes, I am so excited to talk about foraging with you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I've been known as Amelia from Black Sun Farm because my tiny little farm in Connecticut is Black Sun Farm. I grow my own foods and vegetables, and today was chicken processing day. So I just finished that a few hours ago.
Oh, wow.
The big thing that I'm most known for is teaching people foraging because that's my passion, honestly. Most people that have gardens or farms of any size, you're going to have weeds growing on your farm, right? Whether it's a tiny garden or a big garden, you got to go and weed the garden. And I do still weed the garden, get me wrong, but I would have to say probably 80 to 90% of the things that I used to weed out of my garden, I leave in there now
Oh,
because
no
they're
kidding.
edible.
Oh, wow.
Edible and medicinal plants show up. The worst weeds are usually going to be some of your best medicinal plants, honestly, or edible plants. And uh, so,
Well,
so
so
that
wait, let me ask you a question. What is an example of one of the worst weeds that's a really good medicine?
dandelions.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Right. And particularly first thing in the spring, right? Or
They're
no?
all year round. Yes, other than January when you can't find them under the snow. So think about in the wintertime, you're hiding in the house, you're cold, you're eating a lot of soups and stews and oxtail stew or chicken soup, the heavier kinds of meals, right? So by the time spring rolls around, March or April, and it's starting to get a little bit warmer out and you start seeing some green things popping up in your yard, your body is starved for something green.
Right.
It's just partially human nature. We want to have those green things because that's full of all the vitamins and minerals that we need. But it's also partially your body wants to detoxify from all the heavy duty stuff that's been sitting in gallbladder, your colon, your liver for all winter. And that's why dandelion greens are so awesome because it's one of the first things that comes out first thing in the spring. And you can go out and pick the dandelion greens in your yard and have a salad. There's places in Europe that this is a tradition. Every year, as soon as the dandelions are out, they make a big old dandelion green salad. Dandelion greens are naturally bitter, but they're the least bitter probably in the spring and early spring. The thing about that bitter flavor, though, is getting your digestive enzymes going. It's
Mhm.
boosting your digestive enzymes coming out of your gallbladder or your stomach or your intestines. It's basically all those little juices your body naturally makes to digest things. That bitter flavor, whether it's from dandelions or another bitter green, is starting to flow and it's starting to help you digest everything. And that's why you're like, "Ooh, I'm going to digest absolutely everything I'm eating here," rather than some of it's just going to kind of sit here for a while. That's why dandelion greens are so phenomenal in the spring. And then, of course, they flower. So the flowers are edible and medicinal. I will pick a dandelion flower and eat it.
Really?
It's great. Yeah. I do a video like every year on TikTok now. Every single time without fail, somebody says, "I bet a dog peed on that." And I say, "No, because I don't have a dog and it was in my yard." And then there's always people like, "Oh, there was bugs in it. What are you supposed to do if there's bugs in it?" And I
Oh, my
say,
word.
blow
Right.
on it,
Exactly.
blow the bugs off. They're really
Yes.
tiny. It's fine. You can wash it off if it bothers you that much. But
Right.
I just eat the dandelions straight up.
What are some of the so digestive?
Dandelion flowers, they're edible. The flowers specifically, they're known to have some anti-inflammatory properties. There's a very special way you have to dry them, otherwise they just poof everywhere. But I dry them and I make an infused oil with them to use that in my foot balm recipe. In the
Okay.
wintertime, you've got this stuff made with dandelion infused oil. So it's going to help your feet stop hurting and be super ridiculously moisturizing for your skin.
Ooh,
So
I
that's
might have to
awesome.
try that.
Oh, yeah, it's good. In the summertime, the general wisdom is, oh, don't eat the dandelions because they're really extra bitter in the summertime with the heat and everything.
Right.
I have some dandelions growing in my garden. I deep mulch, and the dandelions love the deep mulch. They're huge
Oh,
now. I've been picking them all year. They're
interesting.
not that bitter.
But if they're
Um,
sitting in your yard, they're more likely to be
if
bleed
they're
to it.
getting mowed all the time and
Right.
trampled all the time, they're
Right.
going to be worse. But they're in my
And isn't
garden
that
and happy.
right? And the reason that that is the case, I think, is because the plant is sending out its own protection because it's being injured by being mowed and
It
stepped on.
It's possible. The ones that are out in the middle of the yard usually are getting a lot more direct sunlight too.
Oh,
So
that
there's
too.
something to do with the sun. Dandelions actually grow much like plantain. If you've ever seen plantain,
Oh God, yes, it's
they
all over the place here.
yeah, white man's footprint. The dandelions grow in the same place. So the dandelions grow in areas of compacted soil because it has a really strong, long taproot that goes down and helps break
Oh,
up the soil.
oh,
So all
I
those
like
places
burdock.
people have, yeah, tons and tons of dandelion. That dandelion is trying to fix the soil.
Okay, so you said white man's footprint. Describe what that means.
White man's footprint is what they call plantain. So Plantago major usually and Plantago lanceolata, those both also grow in high trampled areas. So they called it that because the sailors, the colonizers, and everybody came off the boats and, they made trails through the woods. And
Right.
everywhere that they were trampling down, these plants would come up because the
Oh,
seeds are so small. They traveled with the sailors on the boats.
oh, that there's a whole bunch in the pathway to our front.
Oh yeah, they travel on your boots. They travel everywhere. And so everywhere these sailors would make these pathways through the woods, you'd start seeing pathways full of plantain. That's how people have gone there. And now there is one native variety of plantain that I've found out it's huge. Everything in America is huge compared to Europe. Plantago major has the rounder kind of leaves. The
Okay.
one we have here that's native is Plantago rugelii, and it's the
Okay.
same round shape of leaves, but they get to be like the size of a dinner plate. They're
Oh, I think we
huge.
have that too.
I have them in my yard. Oh, they're
Yeah.
enormous. So, I
Yeah,
mean, they don't
I was
always get
struck
that
by
big, but
that.
sometimes, wow, holy
Yeah.
cow. Oh, I want to go back to dandelion real
Okay.
quick because dandelion roots are probably like one of the best parts because dandelion root is specific for liver function. It helps your liver improve
Okay.
liver function and somewhat with your bile, your gallbladder. So you can make a tincture with dandelion root fresh or dried, and it's going to be very bitter. Dandelion root is a main ingredient when I'm making herbal bitters, which is something that you take before you eat to help your body digest.
Ah,
So that's great. Or if you need extra liver support or you've got cirrhosis, you're trying to heal your liver, dandelion root is definitely on my top like 5 list of herbs that you would want for something like that. But
let me
my
ask you a
favorite,
question. So, just thinking about liver support, how does it compare to milk thistle?
I usually combine the two.
Oh, okay.
Honestly. Yeah,
Okay.
dandelion root, milk thistle, and burdock root are a
A
awesome
trifecta.
combination. Yeah, yeah, that's the trifecta of liver support. There's a few other herbs, there's some harmonizing herbs and things you would put in there, but if you just have those 3 herbs together, that's gonna be awesome at helping support your liver function and cleansing your natural detoxification.
So,
So
before you go on, let me just clarify. So, there's different ways to eat the dandelion. The root you can tincture. You can eat the leaves fresh, the
mhm.
flowers fresh.
You can eat
And
the
cook.
root fresh if you want, it's just kinda bitter. It's on the extra
Is
bitter
it
side.
woody, kind of like the burdock?
A little bit, yeah,
Okay.
similar to burdock, yeah.
Okay.
It's not super duper hard, like you're trying to cut through a stick, but it's
Right.
definitely on the harder side.
And then you mentioned making it into some kind of a foot balm.
Oh, that's the flowers. Yep,
The flowers in a foot balm. Ooh,
yep.
that's interesting. Okay, cool.
So my favorite thing to do with dandelion root is in the fall. You wanna dig roots up in the fall. The general
Uh,
quick herbalism 101 lesson for
yes.
foraging and wildcrafting, you harvest bark in the winter when the tree is dormant. You harvest aerial parts, so like flowers and leaves and anything above the ground from basically March through October. During the summer, during the main part of the year is aerial parts. And then in the fall, like September, October, November is when you wanna dig up your roots. And the reason for that is because the plant is starting to die back. All the
Right.
topical stuff is dying back and it's putting all of its energy into the root to survive the winter. So
Yep.
the roots end up getting all the sugars and stuff from the plant and they're
Right.
sweeter.
Right.
So that's why I say dig up your dandelion roots in the fall. And I do this every year. I love it. So dig up your dandelion roots, you wash them off, chop them up, stick them on a pan, and put them in the oven at 350 for, it's usually anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, depending on how thick your dandelion roots. The little tiny skinny ones are going to take 5-10 minutes to roast,
Right.
but it could take up to half an hour or so for something like the size of your pinky or bigger. You want them nice and dark and crispy. Your kitchen is going to
Oh,
smell like chocolate. Your whole kitchen, it smells like chocolate.
really?
When
Ooh,
it's
that sounds
roasting,
good.
it changes the flavor. It's basically like a
Oh,
chocolate mocha flavor. Roasted dandelion root tea has been used as a coffee substitute for
I
like
thought
hundreds of
so.
years.
That
And
and
it's because of
chicory,
that
right?
flavor. Chicory root, yeah. And chicory root and dandelion root are almost
Go
the
well
same.
together?
They're
Or are
almost
they
the same
almost the
plant.
same?
They're in
Oh,
the same
really?
family. They look almost exactly the same. There
Oh,
are so many times I've thought I was harvesting dandelion and I was harvesting chicory because the leaves look almost exactly
oh,
the same.
wow.
And I'm a professional and I still get them
Right.
mixed up. The flower is the dead giveaway, but
Exactly.
when they're small in the spring, I'm pretty sure I'm looking at dandelion. It's almost the same plant. It's not going to
Yeah.
hurt you. They have the
So, okay,
similar medicinal
so
properties.
in the oven for
At 350 for 15 to 30 minutes or so
okay.
until they're nice and hard and crispy, not
Yep.
totally black, you don't want
Right.
to burn them, but
Right.
nice and hard. And then you let them cool, because when you let
Yeah.
them cool, you'll know for sure if they're totally done. If any of the pieces feel like they're still squishy, you need to put them in again.
Okay, so you
Um,
really want it dried out.
you really want it dried out, but roasted. That changes the flavor. And then what I do is I have this little spice grinder. So I put like a tablespoon of them in the spice grinder,
Yep.
grind it up. I have a little tiny French press. Put it in there, pour the hot water in, put the top on, and I let it sit for 5 minutes or so, maybe
Oh,
10 minutes if I'm lazy.
okay.
And then I push it out, pour it into a cup.
Yep.
And this is my personal preference. You could taste it like that as is. It's actually pretty good as is.
Yep.
But I like to add a tiny little bit of stevia powder and a little chunk of grass fed butter, and I just
Ooh,
stir that in
yummy.
there, and it makes it taste like a mocha latte. It's
That's
so flippin'
awesome.
good. It is unbelievable. And I have that every night before bed.
Gosh. And wait,
Well,
why before bed?
your liver is most active at night. You know how a lot of people wake up at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning?
Yes.
3 o'clock in the morning is the hour of your liver. What your liver does in your body is it actually starts to expand, and all the blood goes through your liver to get
Interesting. So it's
detoxified and go
cleaning.
out. It's cleaning
Yeah.
you out every night at 3 a.m. So people that work night shift, their body gets all messed up. But for everybody on a regular, daily schedule, that's what's happening. That's why you kind of wake up at 3 a.m. for a little while. That's kind of can be a sign that your liver is struggling. That waking
Oh,
up
that's
constantly at
interesting.
3 o'clock in the morning is a liver function issue.
Okay.
So that's why I like to have my liver support in the evening. Plus, it's relaxing. It's
Yeah.
delicious. It's like dessert at night.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's like drinking chocolate before bed.
That's so cool. All right. So let me just clarify one thing. So you're an herbalist and a forager.
Yes,
And beyond the teaching piece, you also make products.
I do. Yeah.
And then you teach online courses too.
I teach online courses and I teach stuff in person. So if anybody's local, I teach in person. I go to people's houses and I will forage with them at their own house so
Oh,
they can
fun.
see what's available in their own backyard. I
And
also teach group classes, and my classes online are available for anybody anywhere.
cool. And we're going to do a special 20% discount on your online courses for folks to benefit from.
Yes.
So let me ask you you mentioned that this is your passion. How did this become your passion?
Foraging or herbalism or the
Both.
just
Both.
everything. So I really started dabbling in foraging when I think I was 22. I was living in my first apartment. It was terrible, tiny little apartment out in Washington State. So I'm from Connecticut, but I lived in Washington State. I followed a sailor. It's a long story. But I was living in Washington State, and out in the area that I was in, if any of your listeners have ever been to Washington, you might have heard of the Blackberry Festival. And they have a Blackberry Festival because the whole part of the state that I was in was absolutely just covered in blackberries.
Oh,
All the roadsides, you're driving
wild.
everywhere. There's wild blackberries absolutely everywhere, like to the point where it's a problem out there.
Invasive species.
Oh yeah, it's invasive, but I said, "Ooh, it's free food." So I went out there and I was like, "Okay, well, I'm a poor 20-something living in my crappy apartment. I
Yeah.
brought a big bowl outside and I walked along the road and I picked as many berries as I could, and then I went back into my apartment and I taught myself how to make jam."
Oh,
Um,
cool. That was your
that was my
first
first
experience.
exactly, yeah,
Nice.
on purpose foraging. Yeah, ever since then I've been really interested in wild foods. I started pretty much where everybody likes to start, which is fruit. If you recognize what a raspberry looks like at the grocery store, you're going to recognize a raspberry outside because they look almost exactly the same. I started off with being able to find free food for yourself. Like once you get
Yes.
really into it and start getting into the plants, the flowers that you can eat, the greens you can eat, that's even more exciting for me.
Yeah.
But I remember being just stoked as heck because I found an apple tree that there was apples falling everywhere. Nobody obviously wanted these apples. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
oh my God, I get a bucket load of free apples. This is
Wow.
awesome.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a little bit of work. I got to cut them up, but I made a whole bunch of applesauce for me and my
Awesome.
kids and, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. It's really, really empowering once you finally start getting into that and you start
Yes.
feeling like, you know what, I'm starting to learn more and more. I could make this. I could make that. I
Yeah.
recognize this tree. I recognize that bush.
Yeah.
And you start feeling like, hey, you know what? If somebody dropped me in the woods, maybe I could make it for a couple of days. You
Yeah.
know,
That is so
it,
cool.
maybe not everybody. It's not everybody's goal in life, but I'm sure even people that live in the city would say to themselves, if somebody ever took me to the mountains and dropped me off, I'd really like to not die right away.
Exactly.
and, and foraging is step one to that confidence of being able to take care of yourself a little bit.
So, what would you say are the first things that people could start foraging? We talked about dandelion. We talked a little tiny bit about chicory
And plantain,
and
yep.
plantain. So,
Plantain
what
is
are
medicinal.
okay?
If they wanna just start foraging fruit, honestly,
Okay.
fruit is
So, like the
the number
berries that
one
you did.
easiest because
Yes.
blueberries that you buy at the grocery store are gonna be pretty large, they're about the size of a dime, right?
Yeah.
Wild blueberries are tiny, like a quarter that size, but the
Right.
flavor is so much stronger and nicer.
It's known for those tiny ones.
Oh, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a ton of wild blueberries here in Connecticut. Actually, I'm planning on going
Really?
hiking this weekend. Well, they're different. I'll
Interesting.
talk about that in a second. But if you look at a wild blueberry versus a cultivated blueberry, the cultivated ones are bigger. But you
Right.
look at a wild one, you're like, yeah, that's a blueberry.
That's awesome because I've seen wild blueberries here in Vermont
Oh,
and
I bet you have them.
strawberries too. They're just not everywhere like the alpine strawberries are.
Yeah, I love the alpine straw. I have a
So
ton of
good.
those here too. So the blueberries that grow here in Connecticut, the wild ones, there's high bush and there's low bush, and I know there's like a
Right.
couple of different varieties. I know the high bush, they're
Yeah.
tall. The variety that they grow on purpose in Maine is it's a low bush variety, and they
Yes.
make these big rake box looking
Oh,
things that
yes.
you
I've
can
seen
rake
that.
up, 100 blueberries at once, and just that's how they harvest them. The
Right.
blueberries that grow down here, you can't do that.
Right.
You have to stand there
One by one.
yeah, one by one,
What we
feel like
do
a Native
here.
American, like, I am gonna be doing this for the next 8 hours, okay.
Yeah.
Well, and that's how it is. You can eat some too, but it takes hours and hours. That's why so many people don't do it because it's a pain in the butt. And
They're
I
so
don't care that it's a
small.
pain in the butt because the
Yeah.
reward is so incredible.
So do
They're
you
so
think
good.
there's different nutritional value to the wild ones versus the cultivated?
I don't know off the top of my head for sure. It's
Yeah.
something I'd have to look up, but
Yeah.
in a lot of cases, the wild version is stronger vitamin-wise than
Right.
the cultivated
Which would
version, so it
make
wouldn't
sense.
surprise me.
Yeah, that would make sense to me too.
I know
Okay.
the leaves are actually edible and medicinal too on blueberries. Yeah.
Oh, really? Because I know
So,
raspberry leaf is good, particularly for women's
yep,
issues and stuff. But what are blueberry leaves good for?
there's a vitamin content in them. I know there's vitamin A in them. There's a specific vitamin content in them that's higher antioxidants. That's what it was. Higher
Oh,
antioxidants than the actual blueberries themselves, which is
no.
interesting. Then after I learned this, I started chewing on some blueberry leaves. I'm like, well, that's not really that great. But you could put it in your smoothie or something and,
Okay.
pulverize it to death and it's great.
Yeah. You
That's
could dehydrate it and pulverize it, right?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, yeah. Or make it into tea or something like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a very particular flavor. It tastes green. It doesn't
Yeah.
taste terrible, but it's one of those, hey, you know what? If it's a little extra green powder in my
Exactly.
stuff, I might as well. I like getting my vitamins from everywhere. I get very, very
Mm.
excited about finding out which plants have which vitamins. So that's
Yeah.
definitely something I want to look up now.
Okay, good. We'll have to connect about that. So, okay, so blueberries, finding apples,
Pears, nuts is another one too.
nuts,
Many, many people now are not as familiar with nuts in the shell
right?
as they used to be. When
Exactly.
we were kids, everybody's grandma had the nutcracker and the little
At
tray with the
Christmas
different
time,
nuts. At
for some
Christmas time,
reason. Yeah,
exactly.
isn't that funny?
Sometimes you still see them in the stores, but
Right.
not everybody knew what a walnut looked like and a
Yeah.
Brazil nut and all that. And so many places now just sell them already shelled that
Right.
it's hard for the younger generations, I think, to be able to recognize what that nut they might say, "Oh, I think that's a nut," but
Yeah,
what
but
kind
which
of nut?
one?
Exactly. But so you might have to do a little tiny bit of research. You can probably Google what this nut looks like. But hickory nuts are an
Oh, yeah.
incredibly abundant food source, absolutely everywhere. We have a lot of hickory nuts here and a lot of black walnuts here. And both of them have a green outer husk, then with the inside outer shell of the nut, and then you have to crack that too. So it's a little bit of work doing it, but If you've never tasted wild hickory nuts before, you are missing out on a joy, an absolute
Really? What
joy
does
in
it
life.
taste like?
It is sweeter than a walnut. The oil content is high. I'm trying to think, because black walnuts are absolutely one of my favorite nuts in the world now. I've got 4 trees in my yard, and I
Oh,
eat like
wow.
crazy. They're awesome. But hickory nuts are either a tie or close second. And the only reason they'd be a close second is because as hard as it is to crack a black walnut,
Yeah,
hickory nuts take
it's
even
harder.
more time.
Oh, no kidding.
It's not harder, it takes more time because the inside, once you crack the outer shell open, with a walnut, there's some space around the nut meat,
Right.
if you understand what I'm saying.
Yes, I do because 'cause I've cracked walnuts before.
Yeah, yeah, and then
Right.
you can kinda dig them up a little bit and you can
Sure.
pop out a big chunk of walnut, right?
Right.
But with hickory nuts, you can crack that outer shell part, and then you have to have a good nut pick because
Oh, wow. So
you're
it's a lot of
digging in. There's
yeah.
a lot more, like, brain material around there in the
Interesting.
hickories. So it takes a lot more work, but to me, it's more satisfying because you
Mhm.
literally have to crack hickory nuts by hand. There is no other way to do it. You have to sit there and pick it all out, and they're so delicious, and you feel like a squirrel when you're doing it.
Yeah.
But you're like the happiest squirrel that ever lived because it's like, "Oh my god, just the flavor." It's a walnut, but sweeter. That's the only
Okay.
way I can describe it to somebody that might understand.
Gotcha. And so nutritionally, what's the value besides the fact that they taste wonderful?
Black walnut, the outer green husk, is utilized as an antiparasitic. It's the main herbal ingredient in
Oh,
every
that's where I've
antiparasitic
heard of
thing
it.
you'll ever
Okay.
hear of.
I used to have an herbal dewormer
Implementing.
for my horses, and I
Yep,
really
I make it for my chickens, I make it for me and people too, it's
oh,
my main
wow.
ingredient and the one I make for humans. As a forager, I do a dewormer, a natural parasite dewormer at least once a year, and that's
Yeah.
because I know somewhere along the lines I have eaten snail poop. I don't expect to, but
Interesting. Well,
I'm
among
sure.
other things, right? If you
Yeah,
ever
oh
eat
yeah,
out
among all kinds
anywhere.
of things. You're never gonna eat a slug on purpose, but
Yeah.
I'm sure a slug has crawled across something that you ate and you
Oh,
don't
for
realize
sure.
it. And, parasites live in all kinds of creatures. So
Yeah.
that's why, just to be safe, I do a dewormer once a year. I just looked it up. Hickory nuts, calcium, iron, fiber, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, zinc,
Wow.
copper, selenium,
Something that our soils are very deficient in.
vitamin A, fatty acids. Oh, they're so awesome. Yeah,
The
really good stuff.
very
And
good
black
thing.
walnuts, high in protein, 7 grams of protein, fat, carbs, fiber, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium. I have a whole class on these. I love it. Iron, zinc, copper, manganese, selenium. So nuts are really, really crazy good for you in
Yeah.
general anyway. There's a lot of hype around, oh, you don't want to eat too many nuts if you're dieting because it's a high saturated fat content.
So you have a couple of courses that you're offering that we're going to put in the show notes. Want to talk a little bit about those?
Yes, I have a lot of courses. Yeah, but for you guys, for the people listening, the coupon code that you can use is GLN20. And the 2 courses that you get that 20% off on are my Foraging the Northeast online course, which is a compilation of about 260 videos, plant
Ah,
identification and mushroom identification, and I'm talking about herbal uses and medicinal things and recipes. So Foraging the Northeast, which is the Northeast isn't just New England. So
oh,
I'm not covering every single plant that grows everywhere because I'm a forager. I'm not a botanist. And I can only make videos of plants that I see with my own 2 eyes.
sure.
But those plants that I do in this video course exist in that entire region. So if you live anywhere in there, this is going to be really useful, even in lower parts of Canada too. The other one is near and dear to my heart, which is my favorite course that I made. It's called Remedies from Nature. And that is my online herbal medicine making course. It's basically herbalism 101 for anybody that really wants to get started and doesn't know where to start,
Yep.
but you're afraid to do a clinical type program.
Okay.
If you're the kind of person that likes to cook and when you're cooking, you don't always need a recipe. You
Right.
like to just kind of BS
Wing
it a
it.
little bit and eat and
That's what I
throw it
do.
whatever. Then
Yep.
you're gonna really like my course because that's kind of how my mind operates.
Oh,
I am not a clinical herbalist, and the way that I make my herbal medicines and things is not super scientific. I wing it a little bit. There's a certain ratio, but
yes.
I'm not sitting here saying you need 22% of this herb and
Right.
27% of that herb and blah, 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 because that's way too complicated for me. I teach you, like, all right, you put this much of this in this jar and this much of this,
Yeah.
and you're good to go.
And
And this is how
eyeball
you
it.
mix it.
Yep.
Basically, yeah. And the way that I show you how to do it also, in addition to being easier to understand, you're skipping over all the mistakes that I made for
Yep.
5 years. A good herbalist is always learning. You're always going to be wanting to take more classes and learn more things and read more books and all that other stuff.
Yep.
So I'm still learning. Basically, all the mistakes that I made making herbal oils or tinctures or anything like that, what I tried to do with this course is say, all right, skip making all the mistakes. This is how you do it right the first time. And
Awesome.
these are all the warnings I'll give you because of how I messed it up the first time. So
That's
it's you're
such valuable information.
yeah, that's what you're benefiting from with my course. Foraging the Northeast, I believe, has a lot more videos because there's some short videos in there.
Okay.
Remedies from Nature is a little bit more in depth, specific tutorial videos plus other videos. There's a couple of videos that I made for YouTube or TikTok that actually I was like, ooh, you know what? This is going to be really great to remember. And I
Yeah.
recorded them and I put them in the course because I want people to remember this information for later.
Absolutely.
Plus
No,
you get links to all of my resources.
so one of the things I thought of when you were talking about how you don't measure things precisely is I imagine that that's the way that it was done originally, right?
Well,
When
honestly, yeah.
no native person's going to take a measuring urn out, right?
Exactly. They're not sitting there like, "Oh, I need exactly 22% and then somebody walks up like,
Exactly.
"What's a percent?"
Handful of this, handful of that.
Pretty much, and that's how my mind operates. It comes with practice, so don't be obsessed with it looking exactly right if you have problems. I think I give people my email address in there too, so if you're
A good
making herbal
question.
remedies and you're like, "Ooh, I don't know for sure if I did this right," you can email me and send me a picture, be like, "Hey, did I mess this up? Is this
Oh,
okay?"
sweet.
And
Okay, that's
I'll
awesome.
let you know. Yeah, so I like
So
to give good support.
awesome. What are your top three favorite either herbal remedies or foraged things?
Well, probably number 1 is my birch oil that I make, and I teach you how to make that in Remedies from Nature. It's one of my best-selling
Get that
products.
course.
So, birch
Oh,
bark contains betulinic acid, which is related to salicylic acid. So, a lot of people work
huh.
with willow, and willow is very well known as having salicylic acid. A lot of people are like, "Oh, aspirin, willow." It's actually aspirin came from meadowsweet, not willow bark, but yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, willow bark has the same component,
but it
yeah,
started
with
yeah.
meadowsweet. So, anyway,
Wow, I gotta write.
birch bark has a very similar compound. It's methyl salicylate. So basically, the birch bark is like a mintier version of that. If you've ever smelled Ben Gay or
Okay.
smelled an old guy walking by who's covered in
Yes, my grandfather comes
that,
to mind.
that scent, that is very, very similar to the black birch scent.
Specifically blackbird.
So that's what I like to work with. I have tested paper birch, river birch, and black birch. And of those three, black birch is the strongest and the best one. So that's my
Wow.
preferred. Paper birch works, and river birch works. It's okay. It's not as good as the other two, but black birch by far is the best one. I make an infused oil. I also make a tincture, and I've made tea. But
Something you can take internally, but you're
yeah,
making the oil to put on topically?
externally, yeah, topically. So you can take it as a tincture, you can take it as a tea. Really quick birch story because this is
Yeah.
awesome. So last year I got sick in February. So I was sick and I had a stomach upset thing going on. I was starting to finally feel a little bit better. So I went and took myself for a little walk and I'm out there looking for some birch. I'm like, I might as well do something while I'm out here and pick some birch. I basically was thinking about the birch, but I'm also thinking about how much my stomach hurt. And I went and talked with one of my birch friends because I talk to trees. I drew the birch and I was like, hey, would it be okay if I take this branch off of you? And I kept hearing in my head, make tea, go make tea.
Wow.
So I was like, all right, whatever. I did my thing. I finished. I went home and I said, all right, I'll do it. I was so tired and still not feeling well. So I cut up a couple of chunks of the birch stick, put it
Yeah.
in a cup, and I poured hot water over it and I made tea. And it tasted nice.
Wow.
And I was like, this is okay. This is good, that minty kind of flavor. And then I noticed like 10 minutes or so later, my stomach pain was gone, totally, completely
Wow.
gone. And it
Heck,
lasted a good 6 hours.
that is
So,
amazing.
yeah,
So I
these are
don't
awesome.
know that I would even recognize a black birch. I only see the paper ones, but now I've got to look that up.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, they're
so
everywhere around
so it's
here.
a digestive help, and then does it have any anti-inflammatory
It
properties
does
to it?
have some anti-inflammatory. It actually has some anthelmintic properties as well. So it helps with expelling worms. But the thing that I work with it most for is the pain relief. So birch is
Mm,
definitely going to be
okay.
my favorite. Wild lettuce is fantastic. If you've never made anything with wild lettuce needs to be worked with fresh. So I usually make a tincture.
Oh,
Some people like to take it and boil it. And you boil it down until this black paste, and you could take it like that. It takes like 10 to 12 hours, and I'm too lazy for that. So I
okay.
haven't tried it yet.
No wild lettuce. So you eat
Um,
it raw?
you can eat it raw, yep, is probably the most powerful internal painkiller outside of opium poppy that I've ever
Really?
experienced. Yeah, it's really
Nice.
awesome. I know I'm talking about pain relief a lot, but if I'm out in the garden for 4 or 5 hours hurting myself and I come in, I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm sore, my shoulders hurt, my back hurts,
Yeah.
blah. I will take a couple teaspoons worth of my wild lettuce tincture, knock that back, and in
Wow.
2 minutes, my pain is gone, just gone.
Amazing. So an organic farmer, that would be an essential thing to have inside this house.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because
Cool.
you get hurt or you're sore,
Or
and it
strained
reduces
or
the inflammation. I've been farming for 10 years. I hurt myself plenty.
part of the deal. Okay, so there's black birch and what's
And
number 3?
probably comfrey. Comfrey
Oh,
leaf or comfrey
yes.
root. I have a Symphytum officinale. It's the official version of comfrey from Europe, and it spreads like wildfire. It's
Yeah,
absolutely
I've
everywhere.
got
I
it.
have so much of it. It's unbelievable.
Yep.
But that's okay.
And the
Comfrey is one
bees
of
love those purple
Oh,
flowers.
they do. They love them. It's
Mm.
crazy. The leaves are medicinal. The roots are stronger. You do have to be careful with comfrey because if you were to drink a cup of comfrey tea every day for a couple of months straight, you could end up with some liver damage.
I
There's a
thought it was more of an external
It's
thing to
usually an
use.
external thing. I will say comfrey is not delicious. It is not the kind of thing that tastes really nice. And the leaves have this kind of like hairy,
Ah,
annoying, not nice like mullein, but kind of
yeah,
papery
annoying.
like a cow's tongue or something. It's
Yeah.
not, but yeah, I make it into an infused oil and then I make salves with that. I will tell you, 4 years ago now, we had a hole in the sidewalk because we were digging a trench for an electrical thing. I basically tripped in that hole on 3 separate occasions over the course of 2 months and
Oh,
sprained my ankle each time. Especially after the first time, I was limping just barely on one foot back into the house. I had comfrey infused oil still in the house, and I grabbed some and I rubbed it on my ankle, and that was the only reason I could walk the next day.
wow.
The pain stopped. I kept reapplying it,
Yeah.
probably 2 or 3 times that day at least, but the pain was almost gone by the next day. You can make it with the roots too. Yeah, the roots are stronger.
Okay.
So, if you were to take it internally, if you break a bone, comfrey also helps heal broken bones.
Right.
It decreases the healing time of broken bones by like a third. So
Yeah,
it's
I had one broken bone. I hadn't broken any bones until I was over 50. I have an herbalist here that makes a particular salve that has
Yep,
comfrey in it
yep,
as well as arnica, and I think it was absolutely what I needed because I didn't get a
yeah.
cast or anything. I
The
just
one I
used
make
the
that I like the
comfrey.
most is the combination of comfrey, birch, and Solomon seal root, because Solomon seal root is specific for tendons, helping tendon
Oh,
issues and
nice.
injuries. So comfrey helps heal bruises and sprains.
Yep.
It can help heal wounds, but you have to be careful using it on a cut. If it's a really deep cut, comfrey works so quickly, so well, so fast that it
Oh,
will knit the skin together really fast and trap all the dirt and bacteria
gotcha.
inside the
Ooh,
cut, and you can get an infection.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I would prefer for something like that, yarrow or plantain. Last Christmas, I fell and bruised my leg. I was jumping onto a rock and I fell on the ice. Yeah, it was not fun. So giant bruise all over my leg. And I started putting comfrey oil on it. You can use the comfrey itself, the leaf
The
or the root
leaves.
itself, if you have it fresh.
Okay.
For whatever reason, the times I have hurt myself the worst are in the winter. I don't know why. I'm just accident prone in the wintertime. In the summertime, I don't hurt myself as much. But if I did, I would be grabbing some comfrey and making it a poultice and just chew it up or mash it up and put it directly
Oh,
on the
so making
wound
a
on the
spit
area.
poultice like you would with
Plantain.
plantain?
Yeah, or you could just take it and mash it up in a mortar and pestle.
Oh,
A couple of other herbs add to it, but put that directly on over the skin where that's been injured, and it's awesome. I don't care where I live, wherever I go, I'm always
yeah.
going to be trying to
Make sure
grow
you've got it.
comfrey. Yeah,
Awesome. Man, Amelia, you are just amazing with the information. I've learned stuff myself, even though I've been toying with herbs for a while. This has been wonderful. I'm going to have to
thank
bring you
you.
back because there's so much we can cover. Yeah. What's one thing I didn't ask you that you'd like to share?
Well, medicinal mushrooms are a whole another bag of fun that I like to
Okay, that
talk.
might be the next podcast interview. Then we'll talk about medicinal mushrooms.
Oh, they're amazing. Yeah, medicinal mushrooms, not psychedelic
Yes,
mushrooms. This is
yes,
different.
right.
Uh,
Medicinal or culinary.
Some of the culinary mushrooms
Awesome.
are actually medicinal too. Most people are familiar with oyster
Oh, great. Like
mushrooms.
shiitake. Oh, I love oyster.
Oysters are
Shiitake.
great for for lowering cholesterol, and shiitake, yeah, they're
Oh, is
yeah,
that right?
yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Oh.
absolutely. I think the only mushroom that I know of that's an edible that doesn't really have much medicinal value, if at all, is a puffball, and they're boring
Oh,
anyway.
really? So even the white mushrooms have medicinal stuff?
little white button mushrooms, like
Yeah.
the kind you get at the grocery store,
Right.
those have actually been studied intensely in recent years for prostate health for men.
No
As a
kidding.
supportive, yeah, they're
Oh,
trying to make a
that's
medicine out of
fascinating.
it to help support the prostate for prostate cancer.
Wow. Geez, there's
Mushrooms
so
are
much
awesome.
information about healing ourselves naturally without pharmaceuticals. Oh
Yep.
my gosh, this is great. I
You're
really
welcome.
appreciate it. So much fun. All right. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining me for the Green Living Now podcast. I hope you found the conversation inspiring and useful. And if you did, I would love it if you subscribe to my channel. It helps us reach more people who want to live healthy and sustainable lives. For more tips, resources, and to get a free preview of one of my online green living courses, you can go to my website, greenlivingnow.com, and I have a 7-day Green Living Kickstart Challenge. That is a free program that helps you take small, impactful steps to living a non-toxic, eco-friendly, and holistic life. And there'll be daily actions, pro tips, and there's an online community that you can join that will be there to support you along with me. And it's all at no cost. But you'll find that link on the website, greenlivingnow.com as well. Until next time, remember, together, our small steps create a ripple effect for the planet. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.